As you can see on the screen, this is me, Tim Amyx. As you can see on the date, it's January, I've already forgotten, I think it's probably the, little help here, it's the 5th, January 1994. And as I speak to you on camera, I'm beginning what's going to be about a 2-hour, I'll probably fill up the tape, a 2-hour, what do you want to call this? A mini biography. This tape I'm actually making for our children, my children that are to come, and if this tape lasts long enough, to show to my grandchildren. Should I have any grandchildren, grandsons, granddaughters, this is for you to look at. Oh, I imagine it would be at least 20 years from now, if not more. This is something I certainly would have enjoyed looking at had my grandfathers or grandmothers done a recording of themselves, had the technology when they were 30, how old am I, 34 years old? 34, I'll be 35. I'll be 35 next month. So, what I'm going to do is talk about a number of things so that you, Florence and I, we're having our first baby. We still don't know the name, we don't know the sex. Our first baby will be born in about February, March, April, about 3 months. And I got the idea to put this together for our baby so that he would have something to look at, he or she, and then any other children that we have after that would certainly be included in this video as well. And so again, let me get going here. What I want to talk about are just a number of thoughts that, not so much thoughts are included, but also just basically the way that your mom and I were living when you were born, or the way that your grandma and I were living when not when you were born, but you get the picture. Okay, I'll talk about a number of things. I'm going to talk about the events of the day. I'm going to talk about music tastes of the time. I'm going to talk about pets and animals that I have had or haven't had over the years. I'll talk a lot about my family, talk about my parents, my grandparents, talk about my brothers and sisters. I'll talk about friends that I've met, travels, vacations, automobiles, jobs, hobbies, sports, television, movies, girlfriends, politics, religion, and a number of other little things that happen along the way. Okay, this is my introduction, so what's going to start first? I have my notes here so that I can move along at a faster pace. First of all, let me tell you where we're at. We are at 514 Browning Court. It's a dog going running by me here. We're at 514 Browning Court in Mill Valley, California. And you can probably see the house. The aperture is probably a little bit hot right now, so you can't see where it says 514. There's 2 dogs going by me. Hey! 2 dogs which I don't recognize, heading up the left side of the Browning Court. And I think over my left shoulder is the crazy old DeWalt lady. I think she's over there also. I can hear her sweeping the street. Anyway, 514 Browning Court. Hey! Now watch out for that cable, you. No, come here. Come here. Ah, he's gonna step on the cable. Now get out of here. I'm being interviewed. No, he's gonna step on the cable. Okay, silly dog. All right, I'm gonna say this for the 3rd time. We're at 514 Browning Court, Mill Valley, California, 94941, and this house is where your mom and I lived from 1990. Well, this is part of a twofold story here. I lived here with Florencia, your mom or your grandma, whoever is watching this, from 1992 and through 1993. Now it's 1994. This will probably be our last year at this house. So you as children probably won't have a chance to ever remember living in this house, although this is the house that our first baby will be born in. This is the house where I grew up in, where I lived for 7 full years. And this is a house where my mother and my stepfather lived for about 22 years, from 1970 until 1992. And then they moved to Boulder, Colorado. And as we speak right now, they're in Japan for about a year, although their home base is in Boulder, Colorado. To make a long story short, this house was sold in 1992 to some other people, and Florencia and I were in the process of being thrown out and looking to live somewhere in Mill Valley, and probably an apartment. When the new owners of this house made us an offer, which was basically too good to refuse, they offered us a rent of $900 a month for this house, which is a very large 4-bedroom house with a nice garage, as you can see, and a terrace and a deck, and a very nice upstairs bedroom, which we'll probably show in a video later on. And right now living with us here, Raina, my sister Raina, was here with us for about a half a year, and now she's moving out to live with a friend in Tiburon, I believe. And 3 of Florencia's cousins are here now, Connie, Cecilia, and Selena. And they'll be with us here probably just a little bit past when the first baby is born. And then they go back to Mexico, and then the owners will probably come back to this house, and we'll probably be out on the streets looking for a new house. I should time this because I don't want to ramble on too long. So it's about 10:30 right now. Probably talk a half an hour on this tape, and then I'm going to move on to a different location later on. Let's get started and talk about my family. First, quickly, again, this is me, Tim Amyx, and I myself was born February 15th, 1959 in San Jose, California. I don't remember any of that because I believe we moved to Bakersfield, my mother and father, and I guess probably 61 or so. Maybe 60. And that's where Kirk was born in 1960, December 25th, 1960. Kirk was born in Bakersfield. A couple years after that, in 1965, we moved to San Luis Obispo. And then that's where Melissa was born in 1966. We lived there until 1970. My mother and father were divorced in 68 or 69. And my mother, Marietta, remarried Jim, my stepfather, in 1970, and that's when we moved up here to this house, which you see right behind me. And they were here for 22 years. I was here for 7 years until I graduated from Tamalpais High School in 1977. And then I went to live with my dad back in Morro Bay, where he had been living since the mid-70s. So I went to Cuesta College and lived with my dad for a couple years, 77, 78. Then went to Los Angeles, went to junior college at Pierce College for 1 year. That was the year of 1979 to 1980. And then I didn't go to school for 3 years. I worked, and I'll get into this more later as the video goes on. I worked in entry-level type positions in television. Went back to school, went to USC in 1982, still living in Los Angeles, in Studio City by that time, and was at USC from 82 through 85, graduated from USC in 85, and then continued living in Los Angeles from 1985 until 1992. And again, I'll get into more details about when and where I was doing odds and ends at those times. So let's talk about the family. I mentioned Kirk and Melissa, so they're covered. I could mention Raina, who was actually born in El Salvador. I think she was born in 1972. And she came to live with Mom and Jim in 1988, when I was actually in Mexico. And I don't know the details right now. Maybe your Aunt Raina can tell you guys later on, but she basically came to live with us in 1988 and became a permanent part of the family. So she is now my second sister and my third sibling. What was I going to talk about? I got my notes a little mixed up here. Let me talk about my mom real quick. My mom is Marietta Gonzalez. She came from a family of 6 brothers and sisters. In the order of her brothers and sisters, there was Aunt Helen, Aunt Pat, my mom, Marietta, Uncle Eloy, Uncle John, and Uncle Mike. And they were all born in the New Mexico area, in and around Santa Fe. My mother was born in Roy, New Mexico in 1937. And I think I'll get into more of that later. I just want to give you just a brief rundown as to where my mom, your grandma, or great-grandma, was born. And she grew up in the Santa Fe area. Came to California in I guess it would have been in 56 or 57, maybe even 55, to go to junior college in Salinas. And that was where she met my father, Chester, when she was going to Hartnell Junior College. My father, Chester Amyx, was born, I think he was born in Salinas. He certainly grew up in Salinas. He lived in Salinas all of his life, where my grandparents lived for, some 30 years. And my father was born my mother was born July 6th, 1937. My father was born August 12th, 1936. It's amazing I can remember that. You ask Florencia, you ask your mom or your grandma when her mother and father were born, I bet she can't tell you. Okay, so let me tell you real quickly about my grandma and grandpa, each set. And those are special stories to me because I was really lucky to have been born early enough that I was able to enjoy time and be able to grow up with my grandparents. And as we speak today, 3 of my grandparents are still alive and still in very good health. And here I am speaking, I'm almost 35 years old. This is something, for better or worse, that probably won't happen for my grandchildren, because as it is right now, I'm 35 years old, and I would imagine I will be at least 55, 60 by the time I have my first grandchild. So who knows what will happen in the future, or how long each of us will live, how long each of us will be able to, well, that's basically what I mean, how long I'll be around so that I can enjoy my children and my grandparents the way my parents and grandparents have been able to do. Okay, as I mentioned, my parents had me when they were, I guess, 21, 22 years old, very, very young. And here I am, 34, almost 35, and my first child is going to be born. And if we have another 2 or 3, I could easily be into my 40s by the time by the time our final child is born. Okay, boy, where do I begin talking about my grandparents? Let's start on the Amyx side. These are the grandparents, my grandpa Leon Amyx and my grandmother Elvira Gossett, who I grew up with close in a number of ways. Close geographically because we were only a couple hours away most of my life, and also close because it was a very close family, and I was very lucky that I came from a family that enjoyed nostalgia, that enjoyed spending time, that enjoyed the holidays, and enjoyed taking an interest in each other's lives. I kind of look around me and it's shocking that some parents and grandparents don't take an interest and don't, interest is certainly a word I could use, but also pride, and spend the time that my grandparents certainly have done with all of the grandchildren over the years. And as I get later in my life, my grandfather, now Grandpa Leon Amyx, who I guess was 50 when he just turned 85, I think, a couple weeks ago. As a matter of fact, I went out there and I was with he and my grandma for his 85th birthday. Is that right? 85, well, 85 years old, and he's still plugging along. So I was close to both my grandma Vi and my grandpa Amyx as I grew up, and I enjoyed going to Salinas, which is where they lived for a number of years. And there were always special times, and as I look back on the days of going to the house in Salinas, they become even more special and more nostalgic. I can almost smell the oak trees there. I can smell the tree house that I had. I could smell the way the kitchen was as I walked into their kitchen, into that old little kitchen that was below the big oak tree on the right side of their house. And I can remember running through the living room. They had these real not soft, but smooth wooden floors, and Kirk and I, we'd run in our socks and we'd slide down the living room, and we'd turn on, we'd run and slide back. I can remember doing that quite vividly. And in that older living room, they had a small little fireplace where they would often have fires in the evening and watch TV and drink hot chocolate. And that was something, I don't know where that ever came from. I'll have to ask my grandfather next time I see him. But somewhere along the line, he started buying me chocolate milk. And every time we would go up to the house, be it in Salinas or even just a couple weeks ago, we went up to Auburn, and there's the chocolate milk waiting for waiting for him as I come in the house. And I'd have to ask him where that began, but it's been a fun little family tradition that the chocolate milk is always waiting for me when I go to visit Grandma and Grandpa. Oh, again, I could talk forever about my grandparents on my Amyx side, because there have been so many special moments and so many special memories that I can have, and that I would certainly like to share, and I certainly will share with you, my children, and grandchildren as the years go by. But for general purposes, let's move on, and I'll talk a little bit about my grandparents from the Gonzalez side. This was not, I don't want to say it was not a close relationship, simply because of the distance, because my Gonzalez grandparents grew up, my Gonzalez grandparents lived for most of their lives in the Santa Fe area, certainly during my lifetime when I knew them. So I could probably count on these two hands the number of times that I saw them between the time I was born until the time that I left high school. So for the reasons of them being far away and not being able to see them, I never had the close type relationship that I had with my Amyx grandparents. But at the same time, it didn't prevent me from having special memories of them and the times that we would go to Santa Fe and visit with them and my Gonzalez cousins. I can't remember the first time that we went to Santa Fe. I'm sure they took me there when I was an infant or a young baby. But I do remember very specifically taking the train from Los Angeles. Oh, what was it called? The Super Chief. It's now called Amtrak. It's probably called the Super Chief or the Santa Fe line or something in the 60s. And we would get on board in Los Angeles at 8 o'clock at night, and it would take about a day and a half to get to a little town called Lamy. They wouldn't arrive, it would go through Albuquerque, but Lamy was a closer town to Santa Fe, where my grandmother or grandfather would come and pick us up. And there probably were at least 3, 4, 5, maybe, probably about that many Christmases that I can specifically remember going to. And they were always special because all the Gonzalez cousins would be there. And the majority of my aunts and uncles who, I guess back then, most of them were living in that area, so it was kind of easier for us all to get together. And I had some close cousins. I was certainly, probably, of all my Gonzalez cousins, I was probably closer to Latricia growing up than anyone. That's my Aunt Pat's oldest daughter. And I was certainly close to the Longacre kids as well, who were a little bit older than me, Donna, Billy, and Steve. As the years have gone by, they don't come to the family get-togethers as much as they used to. That's probably why I'm a little bit closer to Latricia, or maybe even, for that matter, my Uncle John's kids now. But as I'm thinking, when I was growing up, my Uncle John's kids were babies, or weren't even born, so I really don't have the same kind of memories of them as I do Lawrence, Latricia, Lucretia, Lisa, and the Longacre kids. My grandmother was my grandmother Tilly Vigil Gonzalez, who is still alive today, and she's closing in on 80. What was that there? Sunshine Home Maintenance Truck. I don't know. Okay, I'll probably talk another 10 or 15 minutes. My grandmother Tilly was a very, and is, a very happy woman. She's always taken a great interest in the grandchildren. She's kind of like my mother. She's very, what's the word? Sentimental. That's the word I was looking for, sentimental. And I can't think of it's kind of come to the point, we kind of jokingly, the grandkids of today, we jokingly say, who is grandma's favorite? David Scott kind of probably has the inside corner on that, or for a while it was Lawrence, and other people have said it was me. And certainly she's been close to Lucretia and Lucretia, because they grew up and they were the girls of the family. Anyway, whether she had a favorite or not didn't prevent my grandmother Tilly from taking a great interest in the family and being very, very huggy, very kissy with the children and grandchildren. My grandfather was much more quiet. I guess you would call him serious. quiet, and some people might even call him cold. I never knew him that well. I can remember the one and only time where he said my name, and this was the year before he died. He was here right at this house, golly, right behind me. You can probably see where he was standing when he said my name. This was in 1980. He died in 1981 when I was 21 years old. And so then all the years before that, I don't remember being that close. I don't remember sharing stories. He wasn't one to talk about, like my grandfather, wasn't one to talk about baseball or movies or politics or whatever. He may have been more with his friends or with the sons of his family, although I don't think so, because my Uncle John mentioned he kind of never really felt really close to his father as well. My Uncle John told me that just a few months ago. Anyway, okay, the story about how I heard he said my name, the only time I remember him saying my name was when I was working in the gutter here. Off screen, you can't see it over there. And I had a telephone call, and little Grandpa Lloyd came outside, stood right at the edge of the door there, and said, Tim, telephone. And I kind of had to look around and go, geez, Grandpa knows my name. He said Tim. So that was kind of funny, kind of a funny little moment that I always remember. That very same year also, I do remember doing one specific thing, one of the few things I do remember doing with my grandfather, just as a grandfather-grandson thing. And we did it with Jim, my stepfather. We went to an A's game. And my grandfather, Gonzalez, he did enjoy playing baseball. He told me that in a different tape once before. He played baseball as a youngster, played basketball. And he enjoyed following the pros. And we went to see an A's game in Oakland against the Detroit Tigers. And at that time, Billy Martin was managing the A's, and Grandpa apparently was a big Billy Martin fan, because I guess he was a Yankee fan when Billy Martin was playing with the Yankees in the 50s. And he got a kick out of Billy Martin coming out on the field and arguing with the umpires. And he said, "Oh, there goes old Billy. There goes old Billy. Look at him." So that's one of the few memories I can remember specifically of my grandfather, Eloy. Let's talk briefly about my brothers and sisters. Kirk, who was born, I said, in 1960. Kirk is a professional photographer. He has a studio in the city where he does commercial and advertising type photography. If you ask him, does he do weddings? Does he do models? Does he do people? No. I guess the less contact he has with people in front of the camera, the happier he is. He always seems to be more happy working with with objects and not having to deal with the people. He's done a couple weddings, but he doesn't like them, and he doesn't do portraits, and he doesn't like to take pictures, as far as I can tell, at family functions either. Although he has his own little personal camera and he takes pictures here and there, but he's not like certainly like my mother, and certainly not like me, where we got our camera, we're taking pictures here, we're taking pictures there. We got books. I got an Amyx book, a Gascon book, a Gonzalez book, a Tim Amyx book, and I wouldn't imagine Kirk has half the photographs that we have, although that's his profession. Melissa was born. My little sister Melissa was born in 1966, and she for a number of years was the baby of the family. She went to UCLA and studied drama, and she graduated in, I can't remember, it was 87 or 88. She graduated from college. I think it was one of those 2 years, maybe not, maybe 89 even. And she had the idea, or had the vision to become an actress. She enjoyed acting at Tamalpais High School, where she did with Dan Caldwell. She did acting at UCLA. Never had much luck getting the big or the good parts, and consequently, she, for whatever reason, didn't pursue acting once she finished college, although she still, I mean, to this day, still kind of has a hope that she'll be an actress. Hasn't really dedicated herself to it that much for it to really happen. And as we speak today, I guess she's 27, 28 years old, and she's working full-time at Nordstrom's, working in one of the women's departments. I think it's called the Brass Plum Department. She got a decent managerial position, and we'll see what happens with that. I don't know how happy she is living in L.A. I wasn't happy living in L.A. I don't know why she's still living there if she's not pursuing the acting thing, which is the reason that she went there in the first place. And Raina, as I mentioned, we got a hold of Raina in 1988, and it's been 5 years now she's been with the family. I never lived in, that's not true. I lived in the house with Raina when I came back with Florencia. In Florencia, I lived with Mom and Dad and Raina for about 4 or 5 months. About that. But I never really grew up with Raina like I did Kirk and Marisa. So it's been kind of a different relationship that I've had with Raina, although it certainly has developed into a close relationship, as close as I feel with Kirk and Marisa. The only thing that doesn't exist in that are the historical family memories that go back that far. I also have 4 stepbrothers. No, that's not true. I have a couple more than that. I have 4 stepbrothers and sisters from my stepfather's side, and my father, Chester, who remarried a couple years ago in 1990 with Gyla. Gyla has 2 daughters, so on that side of the family I have 2 stepdaughters as well. Jim, my stepfather's children, I haven't seen in a number of years. 2 of them, one is named Jimmy, and he's a year older than I am, and another was Elizabeth. They called her Biff. She's 2 years older than I am. Neither one of those kids I've seen in probably 15 years. As I understand it now, they're living up in the Washington area. 2 other stepsisters from Jim's side are a little younger than I am. They're about Medisa's age, maybe a little older than Medisa. And they're also living in the Washington area. And a couple years back, I saw Chrissy. Can't remember when that was. And on Gyla's side, Gyla has Kristen and Robin. And each of them, I think, are respectively 19 and 20 or 19 and 21 years old. And I saw Kristen just a few months ago. She came down to spend Thanksgiving with the Amyxes over in Auburn. So, how am I doing here? Jesus, about 25 minutes, and I've covered one page out of about, look how many I have here. I probably have, you see all these? Each of those is a page of notes of the categories, and I've just finished one that took me about 25 minutes. So let's move on to the next one. Let's do one more page of notes before I wrap this up and move to a different location. Okay, I talked about the houses I lived in. This is a different category, or not, what I should say, this is the same category of houses. I'm just going to give you a specific rundown of where all the houses I've lived in up until today. Quickly, I was born in 1959. We lived in San Jose. I don't remember the address. I don't remember anything about it. In 1963, more or less, we were in Bakersfield. And I do remember the name of the street. It was called Kaibab Street. I can't remember the address. Something Kaibab Street. But I do remember that, and I do remember going by there a couple of years ago. In 65, we moved to San Luis Obispo, and we rented a house for about a half a year up above Sinsheimer School. If you ever go to San Luis Obispo, there's a school called Sinsheimer, and behind there's a bowling alley, and up above there, I don't remember the name of the area, and I don't remember the name of the street, but we lived there for about a half a year. I don't remember very much about that area. We moved to an area called the Country Club area, outside of San Luis Obispo. It was called the Country Club because it was touching a golf course, which was called the San Luis Obispo Country Club. We lived there from 1966 until 1970. And we lived at 6034 Lewis Lane. I remember that. We lived next door to the Eisters. The Eisters were on our right side of the house, and one down lived the Browns. I can probably mention, go on for 5 minutes talking about people and names I remember, because it's still very clear in my mind those years of living in San Luis Obispo, and the people, the kids, and the neighbors, and the things that we did. Perhaps as I talk more, we'll get into more of that. In 1970, from 1970 until 1977, I lived right here at 514 Browning Court in Mill Valley. And the telephone numbers, want to know what my telephone number was? For years, our telephone number was 383-1671. A few years back, my mother was having some trouble with someone who kept calling, and I think she was concerned someone was robbing the house, because we got robbed a couple times, and for reasons I can't remember real specifically, we changed the phone number. And for the past, probably, I don't know, 5 years at least, maybe a little bit longer, the phone number has been, and it is today, it's 383-8936. In 1970, is this thing, can you hear me there clear? Geez, I wonder if it's getting screwed up. In 1977, for 2 years I lived at 550 Mimosa Street, which was with my father Chester. And to this day, he still lives there. He's been there for about 15, coming on 20 years at 550 Mimosa Street in Morro Bay. And the phone number there is 805-772-2307, which has been for a number of years. In 1979, I lived in Canoga Park. I moved to a town in the Los Angeles, San Fernando Valley area called Canoga Park. Lived there for 3 years, from 1979 through 1982.